Joining us on the program tonight from the Congress Party Lok Sabha MP Dipinder Hooda, from the BJP its spokesperson Sambit Patra, Naresh Gujral, Rajya Sabha MP of the Akali Dal, an ally and NDA ally. Also with us tonight, author and columnist Gurcharan Das and Ajoy Bose, also author, columnist and one of our regular panelists on the program. Sambit Patra, to you first. It's a lot of pressure. I'm sure that you would concede that now the government is facing on this land bill, and it's not just from the opposition, from your own allies. Today, Ram Vilas Paswan was the one to join the bandwagon, saying that they have problems with this legislation.
No, I believe since we are in the government and some kind of I would outrightly say some kind of misconception, misconstrued facts have been spread about this particular ordinance. It is our duty to see to it that misconstruction is dispelled, be it our allies or be it the opposition. We believe in construction of this country, and under such a scenario, we would see to it that these kind of misconstructions are in fact dispelled from both the sectors, and we will do it point by point. And so today, Nidhi, when you ask me questions point by point, I would in a very academic manner rebut them back.
No, but first let me ask you the political questions before the academic ones. That do you concede that this has pushed the government into a corner? The fact that your own allies are having a problem with this, are you saying that they haven't understood? Are they misinformed? Are they victim to some propaganda? Because they are your own allies, and therefore it completely changes the political contours of this debate.
So, Nidhi, without taking this whole issue into a confrontist attitude, without saying that our allies and we are not doing well on this issue, I would say that ironically in the political situation of this country, because of misrepresentation of the fact, a kind of perception has built up which we are sure we will dispel, and our allies and the opposition also will see the truth into it. The opposition ironically had been demanding these, the opposition in the sense the Congress in particular, their states have been demanding these clauses. And now that they have been provided with this clause, instead of thanking us, they are trying to take on us. But these will be dispelled on the floor of the parliament, and the procedure has started.
Okay, Mr. Naresh Gujral, let me ask you that as an ally, what are the Akali Dal's specific concerns about this bill? I mean, are you concerned at the level that, say, the Shiv Sena has expressed its concerns, or the way Ram Vilas Paswan has today, or is it just a couple of clauses that you feel need to be tweaked? And which are those?
Well, first of all, I'd like to make it very clear that we stand firmly with the government on this bill. An impression is being created as if SAD is not seeing eye to eye with the government. I want to dispel that completely. Coming to the act, or the bill rather, we have made some suggestions which we feel will go down better with the farmers, because an impression has been created as if it is anti-farmer. Now, the interest of the farmer is paramount, but that also has to be balanced with the growth requirements of this country, with job creation and national security. And this bill takes care of all that. Yes, as I said earlier, we have made a few suggestions, and the government has agreed to look at it favorably.
And could you share one or two of those suggestions that you believe give credence to that impression that this is anti-farmer? Is it the social impact assessment?
Well, as I said, it's not anti-farmer. The opposition has tried to sell it as an anti-farmer bill. So we do believe that we need to reassure our farming community and our constituency, we represent the interests of the farmers, that it is a pro-farmer and pro-India bill.
Okay, so
now, the concerns that we have...
Go ahead, sir, go ahead.
Are suggestions that we are making to the BJP. For example, on the social impact thing, we have said if a large track needs to be taken, then a social impact study could be done. But if a small piece is to be taken, then there is no issue. Similarly, on the consent part, where in the earlier bill said 80% people must consent, we have said, like we have done in Punjab, that at least the majority must give their consent.
Okay, so interesting suggestions that the Akali Dal has put forward, and as you say, you are one ally that is principally therefore with the government on this bill. Dipinder Hooda, then how do you counter the accusation that the opposition and perhaps some of the other NDA's own allies, have got this wrong? They're misinforming people. You're projecting this to be an anti-farmer bill and giving a very one-sided view, to everyone else on what it's really about.
Well, Nidhi, to answer your question, first of all, one thing that becomes clear, apparent to me during the course of this program is that the ordinance which was hurried through, which is the rule of the land today, wasn't even discussed inside the BJP and with their own allies. Forget about, any particular piece of legislation requiring debate and discussion in the parliament, discussions and deliberations within the standing committee. First, at least they should have gotten their allies on board. So they did not. I mean, what was the need? What was the hurry about? Who was they acting in interest of, that they did not even talk to their own allies and brought about an ordinance, which, by the way, became a law, and it's a rule of law today as we have this program, without even their allies knowing what exactly is became the rule of the law. Now about the farmer, the substantive portion of the bill. I mean, it's a very simple question. In the law, Land Acquisition Rehabilitation Resettlement Act of 2013, which basically overall 114-year-old British era land acquisition law, a consent clause was added for the first time, giving voice to the farmers of this country. And it was required that on different projects, 70 to 80% of the farmers needed to give their consent before acquisition could proceed. Now, this government, through backdoor, has reduced that 70 to 80% consent requirement to 0%. Now, you tell me, is it an interest of farmers to have their land acquired without having a need for a consent clause? Whether farmers' consent is required or not, I think Akali Dal should come clear and answer. Bharatiya Janata Party should come clear and answer. Sambit is on the show. He should come clear and answer whether the farmer's voice is going to have any meaning in this country or not. We are not. By the way, an impression is being created by the BJP which is very dangerous, that the interest of the farmer is anti-progress or anti-growth. Absolutely not. We are in favor of growth. We are in favor of progress. The kind of infrastructure creation in the last 10 years has, by any measure, it's unprecedented. So we are in favor of all that. But you have to make farmer a partner in that growth. You cannot absolutely ignore a farmer, quash a consent clause. 100% of the farmers may be opposed to a project and you still hell-bent on doing it. I think that's, not gone down with the farmers of this community, of this country. And the farmers are congregating against the government on this issue. And that's why you see
before I
all
open
the
this up,
political parties.
Yeah, before I open this up to the commentators, Sambit, one quick point that, is the BJP really nervous about the kind of backlash it's receiving on this bill? Because there also seems to be a very contradictory position coming out from within the government, or a parallel strategy. On one hand, we hear that the PM is standing firm. He's saying there'll be no changes to the land bill. On the other hand, Nitin Gadkari says that we're willing to discuss these controversial clauses. So it seems that the government itself is confused about how to deal with this. You seem nervous about it.
Nidhi, no one is confused, no one is nervous. I do not want to behave as a politician today. I would rather be a good teacher and an academician, and let me rebut point by point. Number one, my good friend Mr. Dipendra Hooda was speaking about the urgency, as to why there was an urgency. Let Mr. Dipendra Hooda know of the urgency. Number one, Section 105 had kept 13 acts exempted from the benefits of the rehabilitation and the resettlement clause of the land acquisition. And we were in a hurry because 31st December 2014 was the last date. If a notification or if an amendment to it, ordinance was not brought, then definitely the benefits would not have been extended to these 13 clauses which fell under the Section 4. So definitely we have extended help to innumerable farmers through these 13 acts, and that's the result as to why there was an ordinance. Now, second question that my good friend asked about is that consent clause. Why the consent clause have been taken away? Mr. Dipendra, you belong to Haryana. You were in government. Now, here is the letter of the Haryana government, which you wrote after the bill was passed by your own government. And I read out 3 lines. the consent clause, section 2/2, should be re-examined as ownership of land vests with the government in PPP project. The consent clause should be removed from the PPP projects. Alternatively, consent requirements may be brought down to 50%. Now, Mr. Hooda, this was the requirement as per the Chief Minister of Haryana. In fact, if you look into the Chief Ministers of various states, including the
please clarify
states,
that this is not a letter the Chief Minister wrote.
Who's written this letter? Sir, one second. Sambit, whose letter is this? Whose letter is this? Who's written this letter? Deepinder or Mr. Hooda, the CM, the former CM?
The Revenue Minister, the Revenue Minister of Haryana, I have the letter of all the Revenue Ministers of all the states who attended this meeting on 27th of June 2014. 32 states and union territories under the auspices of Nitin Gadkari attended this meeting. If you want me, I'll share this letter immediately with you and Mr. Deependra Hooda.
Let me get Deependra's response to that.
Letter, all that this government has done is, since land is in the concurrent property, the government has said, well, yes, let the consent depend upon the state government. If the appropriate government, that is the state government, feels it under the auspices of public interest, may not go for consent on 5 issues only. If you want me, I will read out those issues.
No, we have those graphics on. But let me get Deependra's response to that. Deepinder, actually that's one of the arguments that weakens the Congress's protest against this bill, is how, your own state governments have in the past, opposed the bill that your government had passed in Parliament. Now he has read out what the Revenue Minister of Haryana said when your party was in power. How do you respond? That's quite an interesting letter.
No, this is very interesting, Nidhi, by the way. The reason why I asked Sambit to clarify who's written that letter is because in some of the papers today, that letter was attributed to Bhupinder Singh Hooda ji. But anyway, moving beyond, this letter, I've read this letter also, seeks clarifications on certain points and makes a suggestion of 50% consent, exactly what Shiromani Akali Dal was saying, on a PPP project. My point is that if there was a sense among certain quarters that the law could be fine-tuned a little bit more, deliberations and discussions could have taken place. Akali Dal's point of view could have been heard. Some of the other people, the stakeholders, their point of views could be heard. The government isn't even ready, even today. Nidhi, I'll tell you this much. The government isn't even ready to send this bill to the standing committee. Yesterday, when the bill was introduced by the minister,
are you saying that you're okay with a 50% consent instead of 80%?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. That was one of the clarifications that the Revenue Minister of Haryana sought. It was not a government of Haryana suggestion that we want any deletion in the consent clause. I'm not okay with it at all. I want to make it very clear.
Okay, let me just get the commentators
what I'm saying is, I welcome any attempts for bringing about deliberations, discussions, hearing out all the stakeholders and to bringing on a consensus. Because remember, when this bill was enacted, it overhauled a 114-year-old British era law, and it was enacted in a period of 2 years where there were widespread deliberations. All the leaders of opposition were consulted.
In which this has been pushed through, and I think that's where the government is on the back foot. So Gurcharan Das, let's weigh in on this. If indeed the government does come under pressure on this, maybe not today, but maybe some weeks down the line, how badly does that hurt the reform agenda that they have been expected to trumpet and
I think that's
and
a very
out?
good question.
Yeah.
The mistake we see here is the same mistake that the Congress governments have been making. The reformers have not sold the reforms. Margaret Thatcher used to say that she used to spend 80% of her time selling the reforms and only 20% time doing them. Now this false impression has got created that the farmers' interests are really different from the so-called the bad corporates. In fact, the agenda of the country is jobs. Nothing is more important for us to create 1 million jobs per month. And ease of land acquisition helps to create the jobs. Even the son of a farmer wants a job, doesn't necessarily want to be a farmer. And so really,
you're saying they've got the messaging wrong. They haven't been able to sell it.
Yes, they've got the messaging wrong. The fact is, the interests of all Indians here are the same. That's why they elected Modi for the chief reason to bring jobs. Now you need, even in infrastructure projects, investment in infrastructure projects helps to create those kinds of jobs. Jobs ultimately are the center post that we should, the budget that's coming on Saturday, we should measure it for how well it will create jobs.
But Mr. Das, there are also farmers protesting. I mean,
Yes.
these are not just political protests. There are farmers who've done padyatras in the last few days. Yeah.
And
No,
they
but I
haven't
think
been-
what he's
Yeah.
saying makes a lot of sense. That if you have to do something like the land bill, you need to
Sell it.
sell this.
Yes.
You know, one of the big problems is the clumsy handling by the government of this. And he's absolutely right, the Congress made the same mistake. The thing is that in a democracy, in a largely agricultural country, it is stupid to try and force anything through. You have to convince people. And I think that's where they failed. Firstly, they've failed to convince, and what is just going on through this program is that various political parties have tied themselves up in knots. The Sumitra Mahajan committee report actually suggested much more drastic measures which were not accepted in the original land acquisition bill. Then suddenly we find the BJP changing its position. Similarly, Congress state governments did question the land
Exactly.
acquisition
Everyone's
bill.
had various
so
U-turns on
everybody
it,
sort
yeah.
of, you know, turn U-turn. But let us not go into it. This path of ordinance and trying to ram it through Parliament, I think it's a silly idea, because what has happened is that it has cost the BJP even its own allies, and it gives an impression that everybody is ganging up against the government.
And
secondly,
Which is what it looks like.
Socially, it's a very damaging thing for the Modi government to be seen as anti-farmer. I mean,
Because
I can tell you.
perception is everything in politics.
Everything.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Anna Hazare and
Therefore-
Kejriwal joining
Yeah,
hands,
yeah.
so many farmers out in Jantar Pantar, is terrible politically.